from the Jumbotron. Welcome to the 2020 and 2021 Preservation Award celebration. I'm Linda Dishman, President and CEO of the Los Angeles Conservancy. After a difficult 18 months, we're thrilled to see you again in person. Well, sort of. Since 1982, the LA Conservancy has honored outstanding achievements in historic preservation throughout the county, recognizing extraordinary projects and the people behind them. Because of the pandemic, we are celebrating 2 years of preservation achievement today, 2020 and 2021. All of our honorees are exceptional, and we are thrilled to celebrate your achievements here at the beautiful Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, not only a spectacular historic landmark, but one of this year's award winners. Today you'll hear all about undertold stories brought to the forefront, historic places renewed with life and purpose, the power of community in preserving and amplifying history, and cultural icons revitalized to meet the needs of today and tomorrow. Every project represents a dynamic new chapter of Los Angeles history. Both years were very competitive, so we'd like to thank our independent juries who had the tough job of selecting our winners. Our 2020 jury included Roland Wiley, AIA, Principal at Raw International, who served as our chair. Ashley Atkinson, AICP, Senior Manager of Accessible Housing Program Performance for Los Angeles City Planning and President of the American Planning Association's California chapter. Eugene Moy, Board President and past President of the Chinese Historical Society of Southern California. Will Russell Shapiro, Film Producer at Two Friends Media. And Jenna Snow, a historic preservation consultant. In 2021, our jury included John Arnold, AIA, partner at KFA Architecture, Alicia Paluchek, an architectural designer, Rita Cofield of the California Preservation Foundation, Maura Johnson McAneff, Director of Housing of Penny Lane Centers, Jamie Tijerina, President of the Highland Park Heritage Trust, and Michael Estrada, former Conservancy board member and former senior counsel, Richards, Watson, and Gershon. Before we begin, we would like to recognize those who made today possible. USC for opening its doors so we could hold this event right here at the historic Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum, and our presenting sponsor, City National Bank.
City National Bank is pleased to sponsor the Preservation Award celebration for the 21st year. And we congratulate this year's award recipients for their vision, determination, and commitment to the communities and heritage of Los Angeles County. When I joined the Conservancy, at our first meeting, the new members were asked which iconic architectural landmark in Los Angeles was the most meaningful to them. There were so many to choose from that I mentioned several, but I finally settled on the LA Coliseum, both for its amazing architecture and the historical significance. It's truly an honor today to be here in the Coliseum for this event. City National Bank was founded right here in Los Angeles in 1954, with a focus on real estate to help build strong communities, so we take great pride in supporting the Conservancy and joining them in celebrating your projects today. Congratulations again to all of the award winners.
We are also grateful to all of you. We are humbled and energized by your passion, dedication, and support. Through your projects and contributions, you are preserving Los Angeles history for generations to come. We have a lot to celebrate today. Thank you to our sponsors. And now, the moment we've all been waiting for. I'm pleased to present the winners of the 2020 and 2021 Preservation Awards. Gardner Street Women's Bridge Housing Center, Chairs Award for 2020. Throughout Los Angeles, the homelessness crisis has dominated the city's attention. Yet on Gardner Street in Hollywood, one striking mid-century modern library building has quietly answered the call. The Will and Ariel Durant Library branch was built in 1958 and served the community for 45 years before moving its operations to a new location. The building was vacant for more than a decade when in 2017, then council member David Rue introduced a motion proposing the site for bridge housing.
One day I was actually doing a drive around with the community, And we were driving around and they wanted to show me the neighborhood, the good parts, the bad parts, what needed fixing and everything else. And when we drove by this one building, I said, what is that? And of course, the neighbors told me, oh, that's the old Gardner library. And I said, what's there now? Oh, it's just vacant. And that was the genesis of this project.
Crews successfully converted the abandoned building into much-needed housing while keeping the structure's key historic details intact. The original circulation desk and central clock were preserved, and bookshelves repurposed to storage. The building's mid-century features like the honeycomb brise-soleil were restored. Today, the Gardner Street Women's Bridge Center provides 30 women a safe, temporary place to stay while finding more permanent housing.
One of our first tenants was a mother with a daughter who came to us and said, I'm from this neighborhood. I grew up in this neighborhood. And as a matter of fact, I remember as a child coming to this library, studying, reading, and she was so grateful that this library was yet giving her a second chance.
This adaptive reuse project is a noteworthy case study for how underused historic buildings can have a lasting impact on the communities they serve. A visionary approach to housing, like this project, was long overdue. Angeles Funeral Home, now the Paul R. Williams Apartments, 2021. During the 1920s, an era of profound racism and segregation, Black entrepreneurship flourished in South Los Angeles. Black-owned businesses helped forge a sense of pride and independence. Founded in 1922, Angeles Funeral Home became one of the most successful Black-owned businesses in Los Angeles. By the 1930s, it commissioned the great Paul Revere Williams to design a new facility. In 2018, the Hollywood Community Housing Corporation looked at the building and saw a way to convert the historic funeral home into much-needed low-income housing.
And would drive by this building all the time and thought, I want to restore that. So the goal was to restore this cultural monument, meanwhile creating much needed affordable housing, which was in so much high demand in this community.
The team took a creative approach by constructing new, affordable housing units next to the historic building and rehabilitating Williams' original interiors into office and living spaces.
The historic structure itself wasn't big enough to just make it feasible to do affordable housing. So the organization did new construction on the adjacent site and built 34 units right next door to the historic structure, and then 7 units in the historic structure, plus the leasing office, the manager's office, and a lot of community space for the residents. Meanwhile, preserving the character-defining features of the building, like the long, thin columns, the paneling, and the staircase that was a trademark of Paul R. Williams.
Appropriately named the Paul R. Williams Apartments, it now provides 41 affordable units. Nearly 90 years after Williams' design first opened to the public, the Angeles Funeral Home is once again meeting an essential need in the community. Built as a place to honor the departed, the Angeles Funeral Home now provides safe, inspiring housing to honor the living. Altadena African American Historic Resources Survey 2021. Altadena, an unincorporated area north of Pasadena, has one of the largest Black communities in Los Angeles County. Construction of the 134 and 210 freeways in the 1960s and 70s and Pasadena's first urban renewal project forced many Black families out of their homes. Civic and business leaders saw an opportunity in nearby Altadena, helping shape and create the environment we know today.
We moved to Altadena in 1987. The reason we landed in Altadena is because of 2 things, affordability and availability. But what kept us there was the small town coziness.
Last year, a historic resources survey focused on Black history in Altadena was completed. The survey identified 3 legacy businesses and 2 historic neighborhoods, the Meadows and Cinch.
So we had actually 3.5 weeks to accomplish developing a historic context statement, identifying properties that were significant within this community, surveying 2 neighborhoods. It was very important to our team to meet with the community, get their input on what the community felt was significant properties, because We're not here to write their history, we're here to record their history.
Surveys like the Altadena survey are important because they document the history of these communities, and in order to tell the full story of LA County, you need surveys such as the Altadena survey.
We can't preserve what we don't know, and this survey demonstrates there is a lot to preserve in Altadena. Hotel Figueroa, 2021. In the 1920s, downtown Los Angeles was a bona fide boomtown, and people flocked to the burgeoning metropolis by the thousands. Among them, single working women. Back then, single female travelers were at risk of danger. Hotel Figueroa was built in 1926, financed by the local YWCA. The hotel devoted 9 of its 14 floors entirely to female guests.
This was a project that was the first of its kind. It was a hotel built by women for women. To be able to take that on in that day and age so that a woman traveling to Los Angeles would have a safe place to stay, to have that forward thinking to do such an iconic looking hotel is just beyond belief.
In 2015, a 3-year restoration of the Hotel Figueroa began. Using the original 1926 design as the foundation, the project team stripped away decades of alterations while incorporating contemporary elements and addressing challenging structural issues.
It had been sort of run down over the years, and then eventually it was sort of converted to a Moroccan palace. They had not only covered up but not maintained some of the original historic fabric.
Interior walls were replaced in kind, terracotta details were restored, along with the original character of the hotel's interior design.
Our team, Studio Collective and Rockefeller Kemple, we just poured heart and soul into all parts of it.
Visiting the Hotel Figueroa today, you'll find rotating exhibits by LA-based female artists and culture makers, continuing the legacy of the forward-thinking women who founded the hotel. And the rest? Well, that's herstory. Nomad Los Angeles, 2020. When it opened in 1923, the Bank of Italy in downtown Los Angeles was declared a new gem in Los Angeles' architectural crown. But the opulent state-of-the-art banking facility fell into disrepair when tenants left the neighborhood, leaving it vacant for decades. By 2010, the historic landmark had even been listed as one of downtown LA's worst eyesores. But in 2014, an adaptive reuse project emerged with the help of federal historic tax credits.
Though it was in rough shape, neglected, you could see the potential. We were all driven by how to maintain the beauty that was there and highlight it, but still make the building function.
The project team set to work, repairing and cleaning the original Beaux-Arts details covering the building's exterior.
Some of the historic details that were restored, of course, the coffered ceiling, which was already in great condition. There were also portions of the original marble floor we restored, and then took that design throughout additional parts of the project. There were really beautiful doors on the elevators and on the main entry on 7th that we were also able to restore, as well as smaller details like railings, windows, really anything that was left. We tried to keep it and incorporate it into the new design.
And the original bank vault was adapted into restroom facilities. When the project ended, the Nomad Los Angeles embodied a convergence of old world glamour and the vibrant and playful spirit of LA. The hotel closed temporarily during the pandemic and awaits what is sure to be another magnificent new chapter. You can bank on that. Santa Monica Proper Hotel, 2021. As Wilshire Boulevard began its westward expansion to the Pacific during the 1920s, the city of Santa Monica flourished and doubled its population by the end of the decade. One of the many businesses to appear along Wilshire was the Santa Monica Professional Building. Initially providing medical offices, this elegant Spanish colonial revival-style structure was designed in 1928 and features Moorish details and a Y-shaped plan to capture ocean breezes. In 2018, an exciting new project took on the challenge to rehabilitate the historic building into a high-end hotel.
It took a pretty strong hit during Northridge in 1994, and a lot of the building needed to be retrofitted. So we did assessments with structural engineers, and then we looked at mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, and we looked at ADA compliance, which it had very little of, so we had to do a lot of work on the building, and extreme amount of damage was to the exterior of the building. The concrete work, the stucco work, the windows were leaking, so a lot of that work had to be done. Not to mention, we started looking at how to begin to lay out the addition to the landmark building, which was in the surface parking lot directly to the south.
The complicated geometry of the new structure required in-depth pre-planning and complex customization without deviating from the architectural design or schedule.
Well, the Secretaries of the Interior Standards encourages to have the building be unique. So we have a very traditional building and the addition is very contemporary, but they are the same height, very similar proportions, so I did pick up some of the character defining features of the original resource, but at the same time I made it a very contemporary form.
The result is an exciting example of adaptive reuse and a rare win for preservation. It proves both new construction and historic preservation can work together. Anything else just wouldn't be proper. Larchmont Charter School at Lafayette Park, 2021. For decades, Westlake was one of the most affluent neighborhoods in Los Angeles, with its elegant apartment buildings, upscale storefronts, and close proximity to the glamorous Ambassador Hotel and Brown Derby. As the neighborhood began to change, multifamily and office buildings added to the area's mix of architectural styles, including the modern New York Life Insurance Company building. It was designed in 1955 by Welton Beckett and Associates and was considered a progressive addition to the neighborhood aesthetic. New York Life moved out of the building in the 70s. In 2012, Larchmont Charter Schools eyed the building as a prospective site for its growing middle school population.
Right at the time when we were looking for a home for our high school, and we fell in love with this building because it brought so many unique elements that really were core to our school. A huge part of Larchmont's mission is to engage with the world around us and to have our students engage with the community and work to improve the world we inhabit, right? And when you're nested right in the heart of the city, there's no better opportunity to do that.
The project team went back to Beckett's original design and found that his design intent of providing interconnected office spaces was perfectly in line with the needs of a school.
When looking at renovating and redesigning this building to make it into a school, really practicality is what drove the day. So it was really, what must we do to get it to the place that we needed to? And I think the benefit we had, again, was in what's our mission, what's our model, who's our community, to bring learning to life in that space.
The resulting achievement is a source of pride for Larchmont, the students, and the community.
There's incredible excitement for the students, but also a real sense of permanence and putting down roots for the school as a whole.
This project aced the test. Robert Frost Auditorium, 2020. Culver City High School's Robert Frost Auditorium has had an immeasurable impact on the arts in Culver City. The striking, organic, modern-style building is famous for its massive roof draped over the auditorium, shaped like an enormous scalloped seashell.
Culver City, when they built this building, was a small town of 30,000 people. And they took this enormous risk of building a building which was completely unusual, really, in the Western Hemisphere. There were no other projects, anything like it.
But the auditorium had not kept up with changing times and new technology.
I don't think that the failings of the building had to do with neglect at all. And so there were very clear design flaws in both the air conditioning system and the acoustics that just simply led to a gradual erosion of the quality of the air.
In 2014, a two-phase project set out to bring the theater into the 21st century without losing its historic integrity. A 40-foot-high steel proscenium arch was constructed to support a new catwalk and heavy stage equipment, a creative solution that didn't require adding to the building's thin roof.
And the roof itself is only 4 inches thick, although it spans nearly 200 feet. So it's an amazing engineering feat.
Today, the Robert Frost Auditorium is truly a breathtaking venue for a wide range of performances and events, and is the current home to the Culver City Symphony Orchestra. Now this school is alive again with the sound of music. The Glendale Historical Society 2020.
The Glendale Historical Society was formed when a group of concerned residents got together to save the Doctor's House, which was one of the 2 remaining Queen Anne Eastlake style residences in all of Glendale. It was slated for demolition, and the city allowed these volunteers to move it to Brand Park, where they worked for 5 years in order to put the house back together and do a complete restoration.
The Glendale Historical Society has been keeping Glendale history alive ever since.
And it's a sign of the influence and dedication of the Glendale Historical Society that when it came time for a developer to demolish the good house, they did not succeed. They didn't even succeed in moving it to a new location. The city agreed it should remain in place, and there was permitted a sensitive, compatible development around it that now serves as housing for disabled adults. And then also we've been effective in advocating for things like surveys. Glendale a few years ago did a comprehensive South Glendale Historic Resources Survey that identified some 400 individual properties as historic, as well as some potential historic districts. We've helped to create the Historic Preservation Overlay Zone, and working with residents have advised them and also given them small grants in order to create historic districts. There are currently 7 in Glendale, with 3 more in the works.
Its Preservation Advocacy Committee monitors at-risk buildings, presses for historic designation, and has successfully mobilized its membership on urgent preservation issues. Through tours, panel discussions, workshops, and an annual Restoration Expo, the Glendale Historical Society educates and engages the community to ensure that the historic fabric of Glendale is preserved even as the city grows and changes.
I think that historic preservation works best when the community understands the value of historic buildings and their relationship not just to the past, but to the present and the future.
After more than 40 years, the Glendale Historical Society continues in the same spirit as always, paying homage to Glendale's rich and diverse history and architectural heritage. And that's exactly what the doctor ordered. Friends of Residential Treasures LA 2021. Los Angeles has always been a hotbed of architectural creativity, and we're lucky to have some truly iconic architectural styles, all within one county. Pink hotels, googie coffee shops, Art Deco towers, and historic theaters galore. Yet, in Los Angeles, one architectural type reigns supreme: residential.
Fort LA hopes to create a sense of Los Angeles community by celebrating the history and influence of the city's residential architecture. Our Trails program enables urban adventurers to learn diverse histories of the city by using architectural treasures and their stories as waypoints for discovery.
Fort LA has published 17 downloadable self-guided themed trails featuring contributions from world-renowned writers, journalists, architects, and scholars. Visit neighborhoods like View Park in South Los Angeles, where African American homebuyers overcame systemic racism, violence, and intimidation to establish an epicenter of Black wealth and culture in Los Angeles. Experience some of LA's most exuberant architecture, like the bold Hollywood Regency style developed by aspiring architect John Elgin Wolfe, who came to Los Angeles to audition for a part in Gone with the Wind. And learn about communities like the popular mid-century garden apartment trend that helped accommodate LA's post-war population boom, itself a model worth exploring amid today's housing crisis.
Fort's trails link the patchwork of architecture across Los Angeles, chronicling neighborhoods in a way that exemplifies how design is inseparable from our history.
Trails are designed to provide explorers with dynamic home histories, including photos, maps, original blueprints, interviews, and narratives connecting stories and locations.
Much in the same way that Jonathan Gold inspired us to see our city with fresh and wider eyes, Fort hopes to create a sense of civic pride through thoughtful architectural adventures. We believe that as awareness, enthusiasm, and engagement increase, the argument and support for preservation will grow more powerful, personal, and robust.
Happy trails to you. City of Ghosts Media Award 2021. There is no better way to experience history than through the lens of a child, innocent, curious, and sincere. And when you're telling the multifaceted, complicated, ever-changing history of Los Angeles, Netflix's new animated series City of Ghosts shows that one perspective is not enough.
So City of Ghosts is a documentary-style show about Los Angeles. It centers around a little girl named Zelda who has a ghost club.
Hi, I'm Zelda and welcome to City of Ghosts.
I'm Eva and I live in Leimert Park.
My name is Thomas. I'm the Ghost Club Artifact Specialist.
Peter, it's me. I'm Peter.
In our show, we, the Ghost Team, we look for ghosts around the city to tell us their stories.
Inspired by filmmaker Elizabeth Ito's affection for her native Los Angeles, City of Ghosts takes a delicate and profoundly authentic approach to storytelling about different communities. The Gabrielino Tongva history of Griffith Park, the thriving Oaxacan community within Koreatown, the gentrification and historic diversity of Leimert Park and Boyle Heights.
It was really important for me to tell some of the narratives that we don't typically see about Los Angeles. We tried to interview people for the show that were representative of each neighborhood that we decided to talk about. For instance, in the Leimert Park episode, we talked to JMD, who's a jazz drummer, and through that we were able to explore this history in Leimert Park that has to do with jazz music and hip hop and all of these things.
CG animation layered over photographs of Los Angeles give the series a surreal appeal, immediately grounded by the authentic voices who bring the characters to life.
I think one of the most important things for me about the show was using the voices of real people. Like with the example of Otomi-san, the last Japanese restaurant in Boyle Heights, and I felt like that perspective could only really truly be captured by the people who are running that place.
In only 6 episodes, City of Ghosts reveals the multiple layers of history in Los Angeles and our neighborhoods. It takes viewers on a heartfelt exploration that reinforces why places matter.
We explore the history of LA in a way that I hope preserves what is here and what used to be here for children to experience.
Now that's the spirit. County of Los Angeles Department of Parks and Recreation Cultural Resource Assessment 2020. Outdoor activities abound in Los Angeles. Our fabulous weather and diverse topography mean that we're home to some genuinely amazing parks. But our local parks are more than places to experience nature and recreation. They hold treasure troves of Los Angeles history that could be easily lost without stewardship. County parks recognize that in the past, valuable cultural resources had been lost, altered, or demolished through everyday maintenance activities, capital improvement projects, and planning efforts.
So the motivating factor for this historic resources survey was that we had a lot of capital projects coming up, and we were running into a roadblock where, oh no, we haven't surveyed the property. We can't move forward with this project until that happens. So we found the money and we had all of our properties surveyed that were 50 years old or older. And now we have this fabulous list of historic resources that we know we need to protect.
The findings, a remarkable trail of touchstones reflecting development trends and underrepresented cultural histories of Los Angeles.
County Parks and Recreation has a huge, diverse amount of properties, and what was uncovered with this survey is 45 new properties that we didn't realize were historic resources, and they ranged from master architect design properties with Hollywood history, archaeological sites, PA projects, and then all kinds of properties that had historic significance for special events that have happened there with civil rights movements. We did pursue historic registration for several of the properties. Descanso Gardens, we pursuing National Register status for that. We did list Chester Washington Golf Course on the county register, and we're working towards listing Jackie Robinson Park in Little Rock on the county register as well.
This project was a tremendous effort and undertaking, but Angelenos will reap the rewards as LA County's shared history is preserved and open for future generations to enjoy. In Los Angeles, discovering our cultural history is now a walk in the park. Beverly Gardens Park Royce New Shots Award for Historic Landscapes 2020. Dating back to the early 1900s, Beverly Gardens Park remains one of Beverly Hills' most beloved landmarks, a hotspot for residents and visitors from all over the world. Beverly Gardens Park separates the city's commercial and residential districts with gardens, fountains, sculptures, walking paths, trees, and one iconic Beverly Hills sign. But even in Beverly Hills, beauty can fade, and by the early 2010s, it was clear that the park needed significant restoration and rehabilitation. Historic water features were missing, deteriorated, or not working. The granite pathways had eroded and plants and hedges were sparse. Even the park's emblematic 40-foot Beverly Hills sign had been lost.
But it was in needing of some upgrading. And so we did update it. We updated it to be sustainable. We added drought-tolerant landscaping. We added stormwater capture. And so it really is a great example of preserving the past and positioning for the future.
Local residents, business owners, and city officials rallied around a project to restore Beverly Gardens Park to its original splendor.
Preserving the park really is preserving community. The two are tied together because the park really is such an integral part of the community of Beverly Hills.
In 2019, the 8-year project was finally completed, proving that preservation and conservation combined can pave the way to a greener future. Now this project's a natural beauty. The Formosa Cafe 2020. For decades, locals and tourists alike have flocked to West Hollywood's Formosa Cafe to lounge in the iconic red booths, sip cocktails, and maybe get a glimpse of a movie star or two.
Hey! She just looks like Lana Turner.
She is Lana Turner.
What?
She is Lana Turner.
The Formosa was revered not only by my generation, but by generations before it, and that's why it's been there over 80 years.
And yet, as beloved as the Formosa Cafe is, its popularity hadn't prevented it from possible demolition.
Now, the Formosa was threatened a couple times with being torn down. And Angelenos came out literally with picket signs, and they saved it twice.
Then in 2015, a botched makeover stripped away its black and red lacquered interior in favor of a modern gray design. Public outcry erupted over the loss of the Formosa's character, prompting a second makeover to undo the first. Fortunately, an ambitious rehabilitation project restored the legendary restaurant to its original splendor.
For me, the most important things to save were the oldest parts of this, which was the bar and the train car. And so it turned out that this train car was the oldest red car train in Los Angeles.
The Conservancy helped the new owner secure a $150,000 grant from the National Trust for Historic Preservation's American Express Partners and Preservation Program to meticulously restore the vintage Pacific Electric trolley car. Archives helped the detailed restoration of the dining car and the Formosa's exquisite bar.
And I did a lot of interviewing and talking with friends and people that I knew hung out there. And I said, tell me what you remember. What were the little points that you remember? You know, and looking at LA Confidential and looking at pictures of the time and finding that perfect Formosa moment.
The team successfully revived a glamorous Hollywood landmark while honoring its cultural heritage and identity. So, who's ready to meet me at the Formosa? Warner Music Group Headquarters 2020. The sounds of innovation are once again humming out of the old Ford Model T assembly plant in the Arts District. Built in 1913, the Beaux-Arts style building was designed by John Parkinson and George Bergstrom.
When we arrived, it was over 100 years old. It had been through several major tenants after the Ford Motor Company had occupied it. Furs, which is fur storage, and then the toy company came in and they built all kinds of toys, one of which was literally a bomb for fireworks, and they had a terrible accident that blew out all the windows.
The building was in an advanced state of disrepair when new owners boldly reimagined the old Ford factory as a music factory for Warner Music Group.
We took on an enormous process of preservation: windows, fenestration, doors, floors, structure, all that was a big process. And then to get it to the Warner Music was a whole nother assignment. And to change the feel from an industrial manufacturing facility to an office, to an assembly area, to an entertainment floor, all these things that needed to happen, private and public spaces, recording studios.
The journey was not easy. The exterior walls had been altered to protect the building from theft, graffiti, and trespassing. But the team embraced the project with determination. The facade was restored to its former glory by revealing the historic brick and displaying the original expanses of glass. The original mushroom column capitals in the building are now restored.
When you do a project like this, you're so rewarded because you feel like you've given back to the community. People that live around there, that drive around there, that come and go every day over the bridge, could see this building be uncovered and transformed.
Through creative architectural solutions and historic restoration, the ambitious adaptive reuse project achieved LEED Gold certification, all the while designing a spectacular Los Angeles headquarters for Warner Music Group. The result, a place where the confluence of old and new inspires creativity. This project is truly preservation music to the ears. Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum Chairs Award 2021. Since the 1920s, the historic Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum has served as the backdrop to countless sporting and civic events. Designed by John and Donald Parkinson in 1923, it holds international significance as the centerpiece of the 1932 and 1984 Summer Olympic Games and represents Los Angeles' civic achievements in the early 20th century. But starting in the early 1990s, NFL proposals began to surface that would have essentially demolished or destroyed all or most of the Coliseum. Thankfully, the University of Southern California secured a long-term lease on this National Historic Landmark and made plans to renovate it.
USC is a university rooted in tradition and passionate about community. It has a special place in the heart of Trojans everywhere, but it truly belongs to the world. Securing a 98-year lease allowed us to do what we do best, respect history, and make history.
The design intent was to ensure the renovations would be minimally invasive to the landmark's character, shape, and feel.
Our ambitious project preserved the Coliseum's iconic characteristics and heritage while modernizing the facility to provide a world-class guest experience. We all have so many terrific memories in this beautiful home, and we look forward to many more.
Today, the Coliseum remains a source of civic pride, connecting people to the past while serving as a place for people to come together well into the future. This project went for the gold and brought home a victory. Congratulations again to all of the Preservation Award winners this evening. You are what makes Los Angeles so special. This event would not be possible without the leadership and support of the Conservancy's Board of Directors and staff. Thank you for your dedication. And thank all of you for joining us tonight in this slightly different kind of celebration. Now let's get out there and save historic buildings. Fight on!